I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values, our feelings, or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another Office Hours live stream. Unfortunately, there's going to be a little bit of that tonight. Can't really do anything to help that, but feeling much better. Much better. It's just that this cough is still going to be lingering, you know. Thank goodness felt better. This thing has just been awful. Almost lasted all of October, but that's good. Son of Graver and I were on our way to Mass tonight. We're just loving the scenery and the foliage just turning and everything, and it's just so beautiful. And we're like, well, it hasn't ruined our fall, but man, it sucked to be sick. Just about all of October. It's been nasty, but we've been good. We've really been celebrating, and really I've gotten a wonderful, I have to say, Halloween isn't even here yet. You know, it's still, you know, some days away. It's this week, but I feel like I've really thoroughly experienced a wonderful Halloween season. And, you know, it is what you make of it. You know, I started decorating in September, early September, right around my birthday there, and started watching Halloween stuff, you know, listening to the Halloween playlists and whatnot. And I had a blast. I loved it. So I won't be sad that it's gone, but I'm still going to enjoy the heck out of this last week of it. And once it's over, I'll feel like, okay, I had a good, solid season. I'm ready for, you know, the next holiday and whatnot. Yeah. Crystal Ashes, we too have been sick for a very ridiculously long time. Well, you know, I think you're overseas, right, Crystal Ashes? So apparently it's going around here. Some people are getting like walking pneumonia. I never went to the doctor myself because I'm not going to pay for that. Sound Engraver went. And, you know, so it wasn't pneumonia. We decided it was bronchitis. But this was after we got over the flu. So it was a wicked flu there for a while, and we got better. And then bronchitis developed, and it was just nasty. But doing better. So hopefully you guys are healthy and are enjoying the season. We'll be talking. I'm seeing some conjecture, like some people are saying, well, I like this or that movie on the thumbnail. I'm not. I'll go into detail in a second. All right, I refuse to watch any of those movies when they came out, because they weren't the right approach to a remake of a monster film. Okay. Quite recently, I did make sure I watched, because these movies have been abandoned. They're no longer following that continuity. They moved on to other things. Quite recently, I did watch Dracula Untold and The Mummy 2017. And movie-wise, Dracula Untold was actually a decent film. I really liked it. It's not Dracula. That's not Vlad. That's not Dracula in any way whatsoever. It could never be. You can never build a Dracula out of that. It's not just a backstory before we get to the Dracula that you know. No, it's none of that. But just as a movie itself, it was well done. And I love Luke Evans. I mean, I think anything he's in is going to be quality, because he's one of my favorite actors, I think. I was realizing that while watching it. I remember, you know, enjoying him so much in The Raven and so forth. So, and I didn't even hate, just as a movie, I didn't hate The Mummy 2017. It's not a great movie. and it's so the wrong approach to trying to build a universe out of the Universal Monsters films. We'll talk about it in a second, but I didn't hate the movie as all. It's not a great movie, but I didn't hate it by any means. I refused to watch The Invisible Man. I've read the synopsis. I know what it's about. We'll talk about this a little bit in a second, but that movie is made for academic progressives. Every feminist professor I've ever known just squeeze all over that movie, and that's what that movie was made for. I'm sure if maybe you've seen it, maybe you like this or that part, or you thought this or that element was cool, whatever. But no, those Blumhouse makes movies for progressive ideologues. That's who Blumhouse makes movies for. That's 100% what they're wrapped up in. That's their foundational principle is we need to make movies for progressive ideologues. This is the message we need to preach, and that's why all their horror sucks. Again, I haven't seen Invisible Man. If you liked it, if you liked an element or two, great, good for you. But we'll talk about that in a second. Anyway, just wanted to clarify that I'm not here just to blindly hate on all these movies. What I'm here to talk about is why they're the wrong approach to making a good bringing back or remaking or in some way trying to reintroduce into culture the wonderful phenomena of these iconic monsters. That's what I'll be talking about. But before I do that, let me get to welcoming the chat. Let's see. Nathaniel Lozball was here first. Great to see you there. Ghost Planet Max Inc. Good to see you there. Darth Enigma. Yeah, Ghost Planet Max Inc. shares my my feelings about Blumhouse. Crystal Ashes, thank you so much for being a member for 2 months. You say correction. Correction. Hollywood forgot how to make movies in general. Good movies in general. I agree. Anyhow, hope you're feeling better. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Yeah, I had to read. I'm a lector at Mass, and I read tonight. And, as you can hear, my voice is a little off, but I managed okay. The key is just to drink lots of liquid. I know, a nice, healthy, sane person would be drinking water or juice or whatever. Now I'm going to drink diet soda. You know me. Much to my dear sound engraver's chagrin. Thank you, Eldritch fan, for the super chat. He said, I'll give mommy this. Sophia Boutella is so beautiful. I thought before I saw the movie, and it probably was, it's this 2017, so this is right around the, believe women, what was it? Me Too, hashtag Me Too and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm sure, making it a woman, was somewhere in their agenda. But it actually worked for that movie in terms of the story between the tension between her and Tom Cruise's character. Again, this movie was a horrible, horrible approach to remaking the monster universe. I'm just talking about, what it was in general. It actually worked for the story. And she was a fine actress. She did really well. And there was something really monstrous about when you take a beautiful woman and then make her freaky, it's adds to the uncanny. A little bit for Sound Engraver and I was talking about the Brides of Dracula. And she just read the book. She's going to talk about it tomorrow on her stream. And, towards the end, spoiler alert, but, when Van Helsing is there looking at the brides and he wants to kill them, wants to stake them, but there's a little bit of hesitance there because they do look so beautiful in their repose. And it's it's innate in the male, the aggression to take out, these villains, these monsters. And yet there's also something innate in the male, which says we need to protect the feminine. So yeah, it makes sense that it would give him pause there, the beautiful monster, so when you got a beautiful woman that's looking monstrous or is able to be monstrous or whatever, that just adds to the creepy aspect a little bit, at least for men. You women can tell me what you think about it from your perspectives, but yeah. Let's see what else is going on here in the chat. Oh, Roger Tran just mentioned this real quick. You say you bought your copy of a library copy of Batman Resurrection. I have my copy. You say you don't like it after 150 pages, or you say it gets a little slow or whatever. Interesting. I'm still very much looking forward to reading it, but I decided to read it after Halloween, so I'll start it like this Friday. I've got a few reads. I've had such a great season for reading and watching. I just covered so many great things, great pieces of art, and Um, I finally finished Dracul, which is I always said Dacre Stoker, but I heard somebody say Dacre Stoker. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation. I have to look it up. But Bram Stoker's nephew, uh, apparently is going by Bram Stoker. Supposedly rather is going by Bram Stoker's notes and whatnot. And he wrote a sequel to Dracula, which I haven't read yet, which I am going to read I think next year. Because I like the characters and I want to see, just to revisit those characters, even if I think it is supposed to be subpar. That's what I've heard. But I reserve I'm keeping a fair open mind until I read it. But Dracul was supposed to be sort of a meta prequel to Dracula that he wrote with another author, supposedly by, Bram Stoker's notes and so forth. And it's just awful. It is awful, awful in every way. It's like a high schooler in a creative writing class wrote this novel. It's so not good. It's not fun. If you are really into the textual history of Dracula, it's maybe worth a read. You can tell they're trying so hard, like, see, so we told this, and that's how that got the idea for that when Dracula, when Bram Stoker wrote that. It's not fun. It's hard. It's a slog. It felt like work to get through, but I wanted to get through it. It's so bad. Maybe I'll do a proper review, but it's just awful. It is so awful. So if you want to avoid, avoid Dracul, if you want to avoid a slog, but I will still give his sequel to Dracula a fair chance next year. Nathaniel Losball says Blumhouse has only genuinely had success with Five Nights at Freddy's. I didn't know they did that. I've never seen Five Nights at Freddy's. That kind of thing's not really, on my scope, but I didn't know they did that. From what I understand, Fan Man was saying once upon a time they used to be pretty good, didn't they? Didn't they? Were they the ones behind Trick or Treat? I forget, but like the first couple of movies, like when they first kind of got into the game, they were supposed to be pretty good, pretty decent, which is why it made sense for, like John Carpenter to go to them for the Halloween remake, or, why Universal movies or whatever kind of, it made sense at first. But Jason Blum and all the powers that be there are 100% dedicated to preaching agenda. And that's the foundational impetus of their company. Anything that you might like in their movies comes secondary to that foundation, and it shows. It really does show. Private Eye in Retrospectiva, good to see you there. You're 2/3 of the way through Dracula. Nice. Hopefully I didn't give you any spoilers, but good. Yeah, I hope you're liking it. It's good stuff. Again, one of my top 5 favorite novels. Something Wicked This Way Comes, which I just finished rereading today. That was another reread that I did. Dracula and Christmas Carol are my top 3 there. Need to figure out what my last 2 are in the top 5 slot. But I'm also going to reread V by Nikolai Gogol. It's a short story / novella-ish. Nikolai Gogol is the Ukrainian Edgar Allan Poe, basically. Really phenomenal short story writer and author. And I did a whole projects on him in college in my undergrad, and I haven't really read his stuff since. So I want to reread V because I remember just being blown away by it. It was so good. VIY, V. And then I'm going to reread Sleepy Hollow because it's one of those things Legend of Sleepy Hollow, because it's just one of those things that I like to reread almost every Halloween, if not every Halloween. Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Something Wicked This Way Comes, Halloween Tree, Dracula. These are things that I don't go too many Halloweens without rereading. Yeah, cool. Interesting. How about Dracula? Damn cool. Want to finish before the 31st so I can watch the movie that day. Yeah, cool. Which movie are you going to watch? You can't go wrong with, like I was saying, I mean, I don't know what you're going to decide to watch, but either the Bela Lugosi Dracula, amazing. The Christopher Lee horror of Dracula, amazing. Francis Ford Coppola Dracula, I think, is great. So, let's see. Gentle Savage, welcome. Let's make sure I'm still like welcoming people. I'm just like going off talking about all kinds of stuff. Big Al Presents. Thank you for the jack-o'-lantern. Nice emoji there. Have a great stream. Yep. Hope everybody does have a good Halloween week. We won't be doing a Halloween stream this year. Soundgrave and I were talking about that. The last few years, we've been doing a Halloween night stream. We get dressed up, and stuff, and they're a lot of fun. But this Thursday, I'll have Alyssa. I'll have my daughter, so we'll be doing trick-or-treating and and some things like that earlier. And then we always go get our pizza at this favorite place on Halloween night. If you've seen my Halloween streams, we talked about that. So we'll be coming back early and settling in with Alyssa. And we really couldn't do a stream. I mean, she'd be screaming at us in the background for this or that or whatever, or telling us to shut up or something. So, yeah, so we'll, unfortunately, no Halloween night stream for probably the next, I don't want to say for the next few years. The way the calendar works, we'll have Alyssa for the next few years, but who knows how it'll work. Maybe next year schedule will work out differently and won't be a big deal or something. Who knows? Yes, Sound Engraver is confirming she'll be reviewing Dracula on her stream tomorrow, so check that out. Final Fantasy fan, good to see you there. The Fizchozo Corner. Leia Plus Size, welcome to everybody. Samuel Proctor, good to see you. All right. I think I got a super chat down here somewhere. I'm way behind. Let me check out this. Divinital Cayenne, good to see you. Thank you so much. And thank you for $5 that I finally made it. Work has stopped me till now. Oh, well, I'm glad to have you here. I don't think you've ever told us what you do for a living, but good for you for saying heck with you, work. I gotta go catch Professor Geek stream. Darn straight. Yeah, some people talking about the Brendan Fraser movie. Now, I love the Stephen Sommers Mummy movies. Those 2 Mummy movies. I never did catch the third one. It was so long after the fact. A different main actress. It was a different director, actually. Stephen Sommers produced it, but I think it was a different director. And then they were doing like a Chinese mummy. I'll watch it one day. I will watch it. But I never got around to that third one. But I love the first 2. I thought the first 2 were great. Now, I don't think even those movies, and those movies weren't trying to, okay? So I'm not criticizing those movies at all. But I don't even think those movies would have been the right approach to bring back the Mummy as part of the iconic monster universe. Love those movies. They're classics. I support them 100%. And they weren't trying to bring back the iconic monster universe. It wasn't, something they were trying to do. They were just doing their own thing. But I loved them. Good adventure, swashbuckling with the horror, and very much love letters to the original Mummies films. I thought they were great. Yeah, I mean, don't let me keep you away from it if it's something you'd really like to try out for yourself. That's just my opinion on it. Just thought it was, ugh. Yeah. All right. Okay. Where are we at here? Come on, computer. Work. Eldridge fan, thank you very much for the super chat there. Said, I read the first 4 chapters of Dracula's. In chapter 7, the ship makes a great story. Drac was terrifying. If it wasn't for Van Helsing, England would be doomed. Definitely. Very true. Very true. Yeah, Blumhouse is doing the Wolfman. It's not a Wolfman, but the Wolfman. And it looks so dumb. And it's the same director, as you said, Bradley Renfro. From the Invisible Man one. Divinital Cayenne for $5. Thank you so much. Said read a collection of Washington Irving. Spooky stories, just perfect for Halloween stories and getting some familiarity with American mythos. Yeah, Washington Irving's great. Legend of Sleepy Hollow is the one that he's really known for, but Rumpelstiltskin, of course. There are a lot of great tales in his the sketchbook of one. What is that called? The Gentleman Geoffrey Crayon or whatever. But it's his satirical collection, and he's done other stuff besides that. But yeah, he's a great writer. People should read more of him. Chris Lesh, the Wolf Ma'am. Well, what I was looking at, I saw the trailer for the Wolfman, the new Wolfman. They just put the whole title in quotes, and it can't decide if it wants to be a werewolf movie or The Shining. And you can see all over it. It's just fingerprints all over it of the ideology. You're gonna have to swallow just watching the film. So, when it comes to Wolfman, I really think the closest Hollywood ever got to bringing back, to reintroducing these monsters was the 2010 Wolfman. Now, it wasn't very successful at the box office, I don't think. It was kind of, the production of it was kind of fraud. Maybe let me slow down. Let me slow down and go in order here. Let me go in order. But I really did like 2010's The Wolfman. I understand why people were maybe looking for something different. That's part of my point too, that people misunderstand these iconic monsters. When we talk about bringing back like the universal monsters, Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, the iconic trinity there, but still, the Mummy, Creature of the Black Lagoon, even monsters that weren't necessarily part of the universal banner, like Jekyll and Hyde and so forth. We might be able to bring back, if you just happen to get the right director here and there to work on the right one, you might get a good movie. But the problem is, these movies are not the same thing that horror movies in general are to culture. It's a very different thing. Monster movies are a very different thing. And I want to walk through the history a little bit to talk about that. Okay, so Renfro's talking about the twist. It might be the wolf is actually a woman or whatever. A wolf man. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? We just did an extensive season talking about these movies. We started talking about the Gothic novels from which they all stem. We started talking about the progression, of horror through Western thought and monsters, these monster archetypes through Western thought. And I need to add a couple of the last ones to that playlist, but I've got a Halloween playlist, our monsters playlist, forgot what to call it, which is really covering all this. We covered all of this. And when we get to Dracula, one of the things we said was this, enter Universal into making these monster movies. One of the things we said was that before this, Hollywood never really did actual supernatural stories. They were doing the Anne Radcliffe style of Gothic movies, where it seems like it's a haunted mansion, but it's what we come to know as the Scooby-Doo narrative now. Classic Scooby-Doo anyway. Of course, Scooby-Doo eventually started doing real monsters, but it was always the idea of like, oh, it was really the butler who had this scheme with the heiress, and they were trying to scare everybody because of this or that. The Hollywood did a lot of those types of movies in the silent era, even at the beginning of the talkies. And that was what was popular, and it even extended, even after Universal started making their movies. So what is it about 1932, though? What is it about Dracula first and then Frankenstein that actually made Hollywood decide to go ahead and embrace the supernatural? Because their thinking at that point was, well, American audiences would never really, they wouldn't accept a movie on supernatural premises. They wouldn't, they would either think it was kid stuff, or they would think, that's just stretching imagination too much or whatever. This is 1932. World War I has had enough time to set in and really permeate the culture. We've had the whole roaring 20s, after World War I, but a lot of people, World War II gets all the press today, looking back in hindsight, rightly so. But World War I, it was called the Great War. No one called it World War I. No one was expecting to have another one. They called it the Great War because no one had ever seen devastation or warfare on that level and that scale. Biological warfare. Yeah, like gases and stuff were starting to be used and whatnot. A lot of the veterans would come back maimed. And it was nothing in Europe, and even parts of America, just to see people walking around with no limbs or partial limbs and this and that and deformities or whatever because of these, war injuries that they'd sustained. Then you've got the Roaring 20s, and we're painting with a very broad brush now, right? But the Roaring 20s, for a large part, if you look at art and culture, literature and film and whatnot, was really kind of about just sort of forgetting the horrors and really trying to revel in the good life or whatever, but then the Depression hit, and right at the beginning of that Depression, it's almost like you think of an individual person's psychology who's gone through a really traumatic, horrible thing, and they just decide, they finally get out of that thing. They get out of that scenario. They get out of that dangerous, captivity or whatever they were in, torturous place. and then they just sort of go crazy. Like, I need to just enjoy life and forget about all these things and sort of distract myself. And then something else sort of bad happens in their life, and they're forced to deal with that horrible bad thing in their past as well, because they never really fully process things. That's kind of where the culture was at the beginning of the 30s. And again, I'm painting with a very broad brush. I'm just looking at kind of art in general, but I think all of that had something to do with why America was, in the world over, was perfectly willing to accept movies now about straight up supernatural horror. I mean, it'd been done in the German expressionistic films, but certainly Hollywood wasn't doing it. So it was a big deal, and Dracula came out, and it wasn't a perfect movie by any means, but it was a great film and really scared the pants off a lot of people, as did Frankenstein after it. And Bride of Frankenstein, and all these movies really, they were scary for the time, but they were also dealing with issues. They were actually giving us characters, monsters that we could locate and really portray our anxieties, or portray their anxieties, their problems, their fears, and everything like that, their taboos. So we had doing what mythology is supposed to do. It's supposed to locate our struggles in a mythological character, recontextualize it some way. So that was a big deal. Then by the end of the 30s, it was kind of thought that monster movies, which was just called horror films back then, was pretty much dead. Weren't really being done. But then they started, there was a, it's kind of hard to trace the timeline definitively, because, there was still this or that movie being made. But they reissued Dracula and Frankenstein on a double bill, and Universal saw how successful it was being reissued into the theaters. Because, back then there's no playing these movies on television, in the 30s and 40s. There's no buying a VHS or a DVD or whatever. So you see movies while they're in the theater, and then after that, you don't see them again unless they're reissued, So they were reissued in the theater, and they were really highly popular. So that's when Universal, for example, started to greenlight sequels of The Mummy, sequels of Son of Frankenstein, Ghost of Frankenstein, and so forth. And by the early 40s, of course, in 1941, we talked about last time, we had The Wolfman. Now, a lot of film historians will tell you, which is true if you just look at the general truth of it, that the monster movies made in the 40s, there's a slow progression of them starting to kind of be more for kids, more aimed at children. Not like kiddie movies by any means. They're still creepy, they're still whatever. But these monsters, these archetypes, children have been drawn to them for so long, especially characters like Frankenstein's monster. Children start to identify with them a little bit. Certainly all the pathos that's imbued in the Wolfman. You can imagine teens and whatnot really relating to that. So these monsters we finally saw a split from these iconic monster movies in which you would think of as horror. So by the time that the 60s come around, and you've got movies like Psycho and, the precursors of what would become the slasher movies and whatnot into the 70s, there's a split that arises between the iconic monster movies and horror. You can still do an iconic monster movie when Hammer Horror starts doing their Dracula and Frankenstein, starts trying to remake, The Mummy, and remaking Universal monster movies, or re-envisioning them. That probably is a better word for it. Yeah, they can still scare people, but it's still, you talk to people like who lived through that era, and it was, I don't want to say aimed toward kids, but kids really loved it. It's not kiddie, material by any means. And by kids, I mean, anything from children up through the teens, that sort of young, especially with the whole drive-in era, the 50s and 60s and whatnot. It wasn't for your average adult, to be into monster movies. Of course, there still were adults into monster movies. And so there was this divide. Now, why is that important? Because a horror movie tries to achieve different things. A horror movie now, as we call it, tries to achieve different things than a monster movie. Monster movies, when they're done well, obviously the genesis in the 30s and into the 40s and 50s, 60s, 70s, and even today. Think about the Wolfman 2010 remake, for example. they need to be true to their Gothic roots. Must be true to their Gothic roots. And if you're going to be true to your Gothic roots, that coupled with the sense of pathos, which the Universal Monster movies introduced, you just can't have, like Chainsaw Massacre or Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, which I love. I think it's a great film, but that's not a classic monster movie. It's one of the first slasher movies, as they call it, even though itself isn't what you would think of as a slasher film. Those are very different things. There's no pathos for Michael Myers. You don't feel pathos for him. It's really locating evil, great evil in that other or boogeyman type monster, showing that the evil that humans do to each other, if it's just a slasher film or whatever. And that's a very different thing from an iconic monster film, because you got the Gothic and then you've got the pathos. You're supposed to some degree, identify with the monster even. That was less so in the first Dracula movie. But think about the successful, to whatever degree, the successful remake of these classic monster movies we've had throughout the years. As I say, I like Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Not some people don't, and that's fine. But it was on that right track. It was very Gothic, very atmospheric. And of course, some people say it went too far, and I'm inclined to agree a little bit with the whole love story thing with Dracula. But it got it. It captured that real monster movie feel. 2010's The Wolfman was 100%, and a lot of the reviewers who reviewed the film in the day and even tried to give it a crappy review would at least say the atmosphere, though, is great, guys. The atmosphere is amazing, and it is. It's so amazing. I love the movie itself. I think the problem with 2010's The Wolfman is people were going to it expecting a traditional horror film. You see that in a lot of the reviews. Well, it wasn't scary enough. It's not supposed to be like When a Stranger Calls kind of scary. It's not that type of horror film. It's a monster movie, and you're supposed to feel for Lawrence Talbot. You're supposed to, be creeped out, and there were some scares and whatnot, and there should be there, but that's not the point of a monster movie, And I think that's the mistake that Hollywood makes. Dracula Untold, they were trying to, of course, bring back the monsters in some which way. And as I said, I like the movie. If we're just talking about the movie itself, Dracula Untold, I think it's a solid story. It's fun, but here I am. I'm like, I'm not supposed to be rooting for Vlad the Impaler. I'm not supposed to think he's a decent guy who just sort of got a bum rap and I just kind of, even at the end, you still like him. You still, even once he's Dracula, you still think he's a decent guy. And there's no way, and they, they left the ending in a certain way where they could maybe make more or whatever, could do more, but there's no way that guy can be the Dracula that we know. It's like the Joker movie all over again. Even before the Joker movie was made, they were pulling this approach on Dracula, and that's not the right approach to that character. He's elemental evil. The pathos in the Dracula movie is for his victims, right? It's different than Frankenstein the Monster or the Wolfman. They put all the pathos on the wrong character, for that remake. And it wasn't Gothic, and it wasn't supposed to be. It was like a historical adventure drama, being in Transylvania and the old, the Turks versus the Carpathians and so forth. Someone said, Fischozo's Corner says Dracula Untold was basically a superhero origin. I think this is one of the things that the shared universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was really well done there in its first phases, was really well done. And I think that everybody wanted a piece of that shared universe that they tried to remake. That's the problem with 2017's Mummy. It was trying to be the Universal Monsters as a Marvel take, and it felt like a Marvel movie. When you're watching the opening of it, it feels like it's trying so hard to be a Marvel movie. It's trying to be a Marvel movie / the adventure film that the Stephen Sommers films were. So it's, again, the wrong approach, because we don't have any of that Gothic pathos. Now, on the one hand, I can see you really couldn't, if you're going to do a shared universe with the classic Mummy and the classic Dracula and everything, I don't think there's really room for the classic Imhotep as he was portrayed in that classic 30s film and the classic Dracula to exist in the same film, because John Balderson wrote the scripts and wrote the two characters very similar, very similar. They're both, individuals from a previous time. They have this hypnotic power on people. They're preying on the women and so forth. There are almost too many similarities between the classic versions of them to exist in the same universe, believably. So I get that you'd have to change things up a little bit, sure, but that was just the wrong approach to take. Let's see. I'll get a couple super chats before I go any farther here. Dr. Y for $5. Thank you so much, sir. So the Universal Monster movies were the MCU movies of their day. Yeah, I mean, that was once you got around to Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, suddenly there were crossovers. And some people diss Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. I think it's great. I don't, it's got its issues, of course, but I thought it was fun. I even thought House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula are fun. There's problems with them. They try to cram in too many of the monsters, and they don't do all of them justice and so forth. John Carradine is just not Dracula. He never will be. But yeah, that was the first kind of shared universe in the day, and that's what Universal was trying to say. Kind of stake their claim in making their dark universe. In the last decade that they failed at miserably. Another problem with this too is that movie executives, there are certain professions in which you should just truly be ashamed to admit that you're one of these professions. Being a professor is one of them. Anytime somebody asks me what I do for a living, I'm so quick to explain, no, I'm an adjunct professor. I'm not on committees. I'm not doing the whole diversity crap. I'm always so quick to explain that, because if you're a college professor, you're pretty much one of the enemies of culture today. I mean, just, in general, I know you can be a professor at a very good university or whatever. But being a journalist is a laughable profession. Yes, I know there are some journalists at this or that, small paper or news site or whatever that might be doing good stuff. But being a journalist it used to be the noble, we are the free press, we're the ones, keeping the information to the people. That's not journalism anymore. Journalism is 100% politicized. And I'd be ashamed to admit it if I was a journalist, of whatever caliber. And movie executives is another one. Movie executives, pardon my French, but they are just so they're just such dumbasses. They don't understand a stinking thing about what makes a good story. They're so skittish. Oh no, this movie wasn't a huge wowing success. Let's just stop it. I mean, especially in the last decade. Look at how many times, Universal had egg on their face, almost like Warner Brothers DC levels of egg on their face. Remember they went to the Comic-Con and they had the pictures of all the actors that were going to be in the, and this is the movie, and then we're going to make this movie, guys, and this movie, and this movie, and it's all going to be interrelated, and this is all the stuff we're going to do. And their first movie came out and it wasn't successful. We're not doing that anymore, guys. They're knocking stuff around. But that's the tantrum like that they that's the tantrum that they throw, right? If it's not immediately successful, screw it. We're not doing it. And they can't make any kind of film that doesn't have a preset audience. That's why they want to remake everything. And it's garbage. The movie executives ruin everything these days. They're completely clueless. They know nothing about what they're doing, and they just throw crap at the wall to see what sticks. And there used to be a lot more exceptions to that than there are now. So that's one of the problems that, that they don't have a. Sorry, I'm trying to get these super chats in order. They don't have a they won't give something a chance. Even if a film comes out and it's not great, does okay, but whatever, they won't give it a chance to build momentum. And you think about when Marvel did Iron Man. Iron Man was a great movie. It wasn't the most amazingly successful movie ever, but it was a good, solid movie that Marvel Studios did back in the day, and then they built on it. And they built on it, and they did the Incredible Hulk, which didn't make, wasn't quite as popular or whatever, but then they did Thor, then they did, Captain America, which was really popular. And by the time they did Avengers, it was just mind blowing the culture, and movie studios don't even have remotely that kind of patience or that kind of, grit to stand behind things like that anymore. And it's not like, their approach is making themselves all kinds of tons of money. They're just so desperate for a safe bet that they end up just crapping on everything. So yeah, Andre Hernandez, let's just try and nail this down, the difference between a monster movie and a horror movie. And when I say monster movie, I'm talking about like these classic iconic monsters. Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman. If you're going to go for a classic approach, um, it has to be gothic, and it has to be imbued with some pathos to the right characters. Not to the wrong characters, but to the right characters. Those are two elements. And we could nail down more. But Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein, for all of its, it's laughable that Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein and Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula were called Bram Stoker's Dracula or Mary Shelley's It's laughable that they put that on there because both of those films strayed so far from the content of the novel. But they still had the gothic approaches. They still had the pathos. I mean, they're pretty good takes on those universes. Those two were also written by the same guy. I forgot his name, but the guy who wrote the screenplay was the same screenplay writer for both of them. Let me get a couple more super chats here before we keep going. Eldridge fan said Vlad was a hero who fought for his land. I know. In Dracula Untold, you're rooting for Vlad 100%. Even once he gets the vampire powers, you're like, yeah, come on, you can do this, And you're almost mad at the priest who tries to stop him, because that's just the way that film is done. Divinital Kayan said, hey, what are your thoughts on 2004's Van Helsing? Again, I need to rewatch it again. I remember loving it, and not like I didn't need a universe out of it. I thought it was a fun movie. I need to watch it again though, but it wasn't trying to be a remake of these. It wasn't trying to bring back these iconic monsters in any kind of way. It was the Stephen Sommers swashbuckling adventure approach using these monsters. It was like The Mummy, it wasn't quite as successful as The Mummy, but that's what it was. It was using Van Helsing as the swashbuckler, and that was a fun movie. I don't need more. I don't need a sequel, and but yeah, it was what it was. John Gonzalez, I wonder how you'd do a shared universe of Universal monsters without making it an MCU imitation. Personally, I keep the monsters the antagonists. Yeah, you got to keep the monsters the antagonists. You can't make the monsters the heroes. You can have, you're right, John Gonzalez, a good point. And you need to imbue certain ones with passion, with pathos. And if you're going to make one or two the heroes, it would have to be somebody like Lawrence Talbot, trying, like he was in the House of Frankenstein or House of Dracula movies, trying his best to rid himself of this curse so he's not hurting people and so forth. I don't think we'll ever get that. I think, right now, on the one hand, it's good. You might look at Universal's approach. You're letting Blumhouse do all these monsters, and you might say, well, hey, at least they're just doing small, standalone films of these monsters, keeping them in the consciousness. And that is the right approach in general to take, but Blumhouse isn't doing that. Blumhouse is just using them as mouthpieces for their socio-political agendas, which is going to hurt the archetypes overall in the end. But that would be the approach to start out with. Let's stop trying to build a whole shared universe out of the first movie. Let's just do a good version of one of these, I think Guillermo del Toro is supposed to be dropping a Frankenstein movie. I haven't read anything about it or followed it at all. On the surface, that sounds like the right guy for it, but we'll see. Just do that at first. And then, because that's what happened back in the day, they did. And that's how Marvel's Cinematic Universe was done. Everybody who wants to try and copy Marvel Cinematic Universe back in its glory days never has the patience to do it, because, and you might say, well, there was a setup for the shared universe and like the post-credit scene of Iron Man. Sure. The post-credit scene of Incredible Hulk. Sure. But they weren't really crossing over. They weren't really, other than the existence of S.H.I.E.L.D. in that universe, that was it. They weren't really building, all these threads and laying everything together until much, much later. Yes, Bradley Murphy. I did like the yes, my dear sound engraver for my birthday this year got me the complete collection of the Abbott and Costello Meet the Monsters. You're talking about Van Helsing, CAK Gritty. Almost, yeah. Let's see if I missed anything. John Gonzalez, I'd make the literal devil the big bad. I mean, I've seen takes like that. Didn't I see, I think Crystal Ashes gifted some memberships. Yeah, right there. I forgot that. Thank you, Crystal Ashes, for doing that. Gifted 5 Professor Geek memberships. Appreciate that. I need to put out, I was doing some occasional members only videos. I need to do some more of those. Santa Graver says Van Helsing. Yeah, I agree 100%. I told her, I said, you're going to love Van Helsing. Van Helsing is now one of my favorite fictional characters. He's great. He's so great. Van Helsing is I don't know what you want to call it, the active mentor or the heroic mentor. In every story where you got some heroes fighting evil, they need a mentor, right? They need a mentor to come in and give them the information or guide them along the way. And usually in a classic hero's journey, the mentor has to die off, or the mentor has to just be there at the beginning, and then that's it, right? And that's good, and that's, a good formula. The Obi-Wan Kenobi, who still does a little bit of heroics there on the Death Star, but they can't stay there, or else the hero can't grow and do their own thing. But there are some stories. A good example is Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit with Gandalf. I remember before I read Lord of the Rings, I read The Hobbit first, obviously in order. And I remember thinking how cool it was that Gandalf was still around and still doing heroics. When they escape from the Misty Mountain and they're in the trees cornered by the wolves, and Gandalf is like lighting the pine cones on fire and throwing them down. I thought, this is so cool. This is a mentor who's powerful, who's not doing this sort of contrived, like, oh, I can't act, that's for you to do, or whatever. They're there still doing the action. Now, you have to handle that kind of story very carefully. Gandalf had to go away at some point, even in Lord of the Rings. But as long as he was around, he was doing heroics with them. But of course, he has to leave. He has to be taken out of the picture so that Bilbo can grow and become his own hero in some sort of way. And Van Helsing is the same kind of character. He comes in as that older mentor-like character who knows about these monsters and knows how to stop them. But then he stays there and fights alongside this group. And it's done well because he's not overshadowing all of their heroics. They have to do what they have to do, and he can only guide them so far. So he's a great character. He's that, I don't know what you would call it, call it the active mentor or the heroic mentor, but a mentor who stays in the game and actually does some heroics as you go through. He's a great type of character. Nathaniel Slosball, thank you for the super chat there. He said, have you given some thought as to how you would structure a cinematic universe with the Universal Monster movies? Well, that comes to the thing I was going to kind of wrap up here on. I'll get to that in a second. Let me get this other super chat, and then we'll talk about that a bit here. Studio 96 Films 499 says, Snyder Bros like to use the straw man that the Snyder movies made more money than the first few MCU, but they're the most divisive movies ever. Yeah, see, that's the thing. That gets to my point about how studios, like, it must make a lot of money right out the gate, or no, we're just gonna cancel that and move on, do something else. And I don't pay attention to the numbers of movies or whatever, because they're numbers. But sure, if Snyder first movies made more money than the very first MCU movies, whatever. They, as you say, they're divisive, and they ruined, like, okay, you can squeeze so much money out of a franchise. Okay, let me squeeze as much as I can out of these first few movies, and then who the crap cares about Suicide Squad or the Justice League or Harley Quinn and the Emancipation of the, Birds of Prey or whatever. Those first few movies get a lot of spectacle bucks. They get a lot of people coming in to see, and like, oh, in the very second movie, they're going to throw Batman and Superman together. Oh, this is a murder. Everybody's going to go give their ticket, of course. And they're all going to leave a sour taste in their mouth, and they're not going to come back the next time, or at least fewer and fewer. And that's exactly what you saw from DC's cinematic universe. So, to the point here about how you would do a Universal Monster movies, I don't want to be just the naysayer Eeyore about it, but I really think in general, I don't think it can be done. I don't think it can be done in today's culture with today's moviegoer. And I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. I'm going to piss some people off for saying this, but hey, I don't care. This is my channel. I've always said my own thoughts on it. And it's always bizarre. It's so weird to me that when I say, hey, you shouldn't be supporting this or watching this or whatever, I'm sure there's some people here in the chat who disagree with me on that and say, whatever, no, I'm going to do what I want. And that's fine. That's somebody who just disagrees with me, and they just whatever. or they don't listen to my channel because they don't like what I'm saying or whatever. That's fine. But so many people just get this sort of knee jerk, no, I must combat you for what you're saying. How dare you tell me I shouldn't be watching something? Who the heck am I? Am I coming to your house and turning your television off? Am I stopping you from buying a ticket? No, but you can't handle the fact that there's a little voice of conscience saying, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be supporting that. And people can't handle it. They get so mad, and that just proves that I'm right. It proves that on some level they know I'm right. There's a whole reason I talk about consuming stories responsibly. You know, what does that mean? A lot of people don't even realize really truly what that means or to the extent of it. Yes, watching a movie for entertainment purposes or whatever, there's a personal taste aspect that's going on. And it's just, it's whatever you like, whatever they like, whatever. There's some level of that. But when it comes to mythologies that shape our culture, which is what a lot of us geeks are into, our big franchises like superheroes, Star Wars, monster movies, whatever, these are dealing with characters and archetypes that have shaped culture throughout the previous century. You have it. I'm the one saying here, you have a responsibility to not just go watch whatever you want and just like whatever you want and don't like whatever you want and don't let anybody tell you not to watch what you like. Blah, 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 blah. That is the most selfish and childish view and understanding of what story is. If story is effective, if story affects you, if story affects culture, and there's some deniers of that. There's some that it's just a movie, it's just a movie. And these are children. These are children. You can't reason with these people. They refuse. They're just flatly refusing to see the truth because they don't want the responsibility that comes along with seeing the truth. And you can disagree with me about this or that movie or the effect it's having. That's fine. But the point is supporting, going to see, talking about, giving support to this or that movie is telling Hollywood to do more of it. And it's going to affect culture negatively or positively, you know? So a lot of people who say, well, I kind of like a lot of the things from Blumhouse's movies. You know, is it great? No, but, they're doing some okay things. That's why I said, I prefaced that I just recently watched Dracula Untold in 2017's The Mummy, because I wasn't going to be a part of supporting that approach to these characters back in the day when it came out. Like, no, pass. So, now I can watch them because Hollywood's moved on. They're not even remotely touching that approach anymore, but they're still out there. So I can watch them now and appreciate after the fact this or that was good about them or whatever. But what are you doing when you just blindly consume everything out there? Well, I have to go see it to know if it's good. No, you can use your brain and discernment and maybe, do a little research on it beforehand. We are well past the days of just having to go see it and not understanding anything about a movie until you've watched it. I mean, come on, we're so far past that with the internet, with leaks, with everything everywhere. So I'm building up to, this is part of the reason why I don't think they can ever really do a Universal monster movie universe or really reboot it in the culture. Yes, it could be done despite what I'm saying. There could be the right director gets a hold of this and it just happens to be a really great film. Like, let's say, again, I've read nothing about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which I think is still happening. It might even be canceled for all I know. But let's say he did a really good job with it and it just ended up being a really good gothic, pathos-laden, love letter to James Whale's films or whatever. And it gained in popularity. And then they said, well, hey, let's try and maybe make another one, or maybe let's try and get a director who would do Dracula in the same vein. I mean, yeah, sure, anything could happen, right? But in today's climate, is it likely? No, because Hollywood doesn't have the guts to stick with something. They don't have the guts to let something breathe and maybe develop into something good. And audiences don't have the discernment or the self-control not to go gobble up whatever the freak Hollywood dishes out. Audiences are stupid. I'm not calling any of you personally stupid. I'm just saying in general, moviegoers are ridiculously stupid. They have no self-control. They must go consume. They must be able to talk about whatever's new. They must be able to go know what all their favorite YouTubers are talking about, whether it's something that they're hate watching or whether it's something that they're thinking, well, it's pretty good or whatever. So sorry, my little soapbox there. Let me catch some super chats here before I forget them because they're coming in. Eldridge fan said, I watched Rebel Moon or Sophia. Rebel Moon. What is Rebel Moon again? Was that the I think I know what that is. I'm having a brain fart here though. Yeah, that was the Zack Snyder's attempt to do a Star Wars movie. You know, until you just mentioned it, I did not put together that was the same actress from The Mummy. Eldritch fan did not put that together in my mind. Didn't even recognize her. I guess without all the tattooy makeup or whatever. You really like that actress, man. Dr. Y for $5. Modern Hollywood isn't a story creating culture anymore. It's not. It's an industry. They make products, not stories. Very good way of putting it. Very good way of putting it. And that's what's so frustrating and so intensely infuriating when they touch franchises like Star Wars or these, beloved superhero characters or whatever, who are 100% coming from real story. That's what they mean to culture. And Hollywood's like, let's just slap a product on them or whatever, and not give them the love and attention they deserve. It's infuriating. And it's even more infuriating when you got people, well, I liked it. There were some parts of it that were okay. It's like, oh, shut up. Get out of here. Under Hernandez for $5 said, since you like Dracula, have you read the comic where X-Men fight Dracula and Dracula wants Storm to be his bride? No, I have not seen that. Looks like you're finishing out your comment here. You see there's a scene where, thank you for the super chats here, Andre Hernandez. Appreciate you super chatting to say that. There's a scene where Wolverine tries to make a cross with his claws, but it doesn't work because he doesn't believe. Nightcrawler believes and makes it, and Nightcrawler would, right? Because Nightcrawler's the good Catholic. That's awesome. No, I have not even remotely heard about that story. I'll have to look that up. The closest thing I remember to that is the great episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends when Dracula kidnaps Angelica, Firestorm. That was a good episode, in terms of children's cartoons. But I have not heard. I'll have to look up that Dracula versus the X-Men comic. That sounds really cool. Thank you, Studio 96 Film. Media literacy. Yeah, this is a big thing. People don't understand it. I try to teach my students that, rhetorical awareness in terms of reading an article, but in watching a film too, And people don't have the attention spans today, or the self-control, or the ability to really just the capability with the way technology's ruined people's brains to really be rhetorically aware, to have some media literacy about what's being preached to you, what's being presented to you, for what intentions. I don't care what intentions. I'm just here to enjoy what I enjoy. Okay, well, have a blast, selfish fatso. Go, whatever. I say fatso because somebody's just gorging themselves on anything Hollywood gives them, that kind of thing. Sound engraver, thank you for my super chat there, my love. Or at least flexing your membership there. We're in an age that's psychologically different from when the Monsters films were released. Just look back on the classics and keep them timeless. Yeah, exactly. Now, and that begs the question, though. Well, isn't there a way to do to bring back the monsters that reflect our specific psychological issues or our anxieties or whatever? And I think probably yes. But again, like I said, I don't think the industry and the culture is able to produce, support, or receive it. Michael Scimbati's here. I bet you we're going to talk about the Joker. Not yet. Wow, good. Michael Scimbati said, what does Dr. Doom represent? Interesting character. Again, me not being a super Marvel, I know Dr. Doom, from the Fantastic Four and everything, and then he's a big Marvel guy too. But Dr. Doom is it's a good point because he is a very Gothic-like villain. I mean, he owns, was it Latveria? Is that his country that he goes? Which is like, isn't he even supposed to be in the Carpathians or something? It is sort of a Dracula-like country, and he's this man wearing this iron mask, because of his deformities and whatnot, and sort of the wicked master scientist or mad scientist or something. He is his character, you can see, was very influenced by that sort of Gothic monster film. I don't know enough about the character to really know what he represents or presents or anything, but it's a good point calling him out, because I think his character definitely is comes at it. A lot of comic book characters come out of these Gothic stories, either novels or films. Ghost Planet Maxine is talking about Blade. Yeah, Blade, came, as you say there, he spun off of the old comic Tomb of Dracula. And I've got some of those comics, and that's some of our fun, even Batman came out of the Gothic pulp verse, the Gothic detective and so forth. Yeah, I'm not buying RDJ as Doctor Doom either, but I don't care because I'm not even remotely going to watch it or be into it. Lecture Barber, the Monster Renaissance. That'd be fun, right? It'd be great if we could have one of those. It really would be. And I love the characters. And, it hurts me to say that, we couldn't do it today. And I'm not trying to be a total naysayer. Yes, of course it is possible, but all the stars would really have to align. Maybe they will. I hope they will. But it just stinks that you see these characters, these monsters who have thrilled and captivated and meant so much to people and culture from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Famous Monsters of Horrorland, that magazine was, just going after all these characters and keeping them alive for so long. And the reruns of these characters, every time they would bring them back on television or whatever. Nowadays, what child is going to sit down and watch Frankenstein? Even into the 90s, children would still watch these Universal monster movies. I've got these are from the Burger King's Kids Club. I've got Frankenstein around here somewhere, but these are in the 90s. Burger King's Kid Club did Universal monster toys as Happy Meal toys or Kids Club toys, because kids were still watching these movies. They knew these characters, they knew these archetypes. Now if a child thinks of the Wolfman at all, it'll be Blumhouse's nonsense, old man looking character, trainee, whatever it is. All right. Man, I'm just one tangent after tangent after tangent tonight. Elders fan, thank you again. Said I give Snyder points for trying original and for so. Oh, you mean for the Rebel Moon thing? I couldn't sit through it. I know that, but I'm glad you got your Sophia on screen. She looks so different. I said that she was a pretty woman in terms of the Mummy when I was talking about taking a beautiful woman and making her monstrous or grotesque or whatever. Don't hate me for this, Elders fan, but I didn't even recognize her in the Rebel Moon trailers and whatnot. And I don't even think she's all that pretty in the Rebel Moon approach to her because they're trying to butcher up so much, which is what Zack Snyder does. Zack Snyder, he even tries to make his women look like sculpted naked men because he just has this bizarre homoerotic fetish for a bare male sculpted torso. It's really bizarre and weird. Anyway, Dr. Y, thank you very much. And I'm going to beat Michael Scimbati to it. A true standalone Joker movie would be a horror movie. It could. Of course, I think that'd be going too dark with the Joker. But Joker's been treated pretty horrifically he's been presented pretty horrifically in the comics. And I'm not just talking about like the nonsense Snyder Capullos, cutting his face off and all that bizarre garbage. But you've had him. I remember there was this one, I can't remember what comic it was. I think it was a Batman Superman team up. And there's a woman in the asylum who, I forget what her issue is, but she's like, she wants to see the light. She wants the light. I need the light. I forget what her deal is, but she keeps saying that. So Joker just cuts her eyelids off so she can always see the light. I mean, that's terrifying. It's creepy. That's gross. And that's, that's like really a step too far for the Joker. But just one little thing like that here and there out of the Joker reminds you of how dangerous a villain he is. And yet, you can't go too far. But yeah, anyway, whole other topic. That's interesting. I never thought about that. Sophia Boutella would make a good Talia al Ghul. Maybe. I didn't even know her name until you guys started saying it. I love, Ryan George does the pitch meeting. His pitch meeting for Rebel Moon, hilarious. Because Rebel Moon tries to cram in so many characters. We're trying desperately to this team, and oh no, this team's really important, guys. And then you get like all of 30 seconds to get to know each member of the team. And the pitch meeting, the writer's like, and then so and so dies, and the studio's like, oh no, wait, who was he? He was one of the guys. Oh no, it's like no one. Oh, Zack Snyder's not a good storyteller. He's a very specific visual artist. And if you like his aesthetics, then it makes sense that you would like his visuals. And when he's got a solid story and script pre-made, ready-made, that he doesn't have the power to come crap all over, he can do some good stuff. Like I said, I think his approach to The Watchmen, if you like The Watchmen, if you wanted The Watchmen as a film version, I think his approach is pretty much as good as you could get on that kind of thing. But or with 300, you know. But he's just not a storyteller. He's not. He's a visual artist. That's all he is. Yes, Michael Simbadi, the Nicholson Joker. I love the Nicholson Joker. I love that gangster Joker. And of course, I love Cesar Romero's Joker, you know, from early comics too. But yeah, the Nicholson Joker was just great. Um, acid spitting flowers, Smilex. Yeah, and Jack Nicholson's Joker was horrific. Want to be the world's first fully functioning homicidal artist. That's terrifyingly grotesque and horrific. You know, bringing what's her name? His Jack Napier's girlfriend. Then he's like, you know, experimenting with acid on her face she's just a sketch, really, you know, and oh, it's terrifying. And yet it was done in a way and presented in a way that wasn't like a horror film. You knew this guy was dangerous. He needed to be stopped, but he was also a comic book villain, and Batman was going to do it, you know? Oh, pitch meetings are tight. Yeah. A lot of those little sayings from those. My favorite little saying in the pitch meetings is when the executive will point out some glaring issue in the story, and the writer's like, "Hey, shut up. So anyway, the next thing we're going to do is this and that." Because that's exactly the way Hollywood writes stories. Hey, shut up. Anyway, the next thing's going to happen is blah, blah, blah. I'm going to need you to get all the way off my back about this. Okay, so the next thing that's going to happen is... That's funny. All right, guys. Well, I've been going at it for an hour here. I think I'm going to wrap it up. I don't really feel like I've really fully expressed the topic, but we got, you know, enough into it, as much as you can in an hour anyway. And as much as my voice was able to hold out for anyhow. Yeah, the Tony Grigo, the design for the Blumhouse Wolfman is awful. It doesn't even look like a Wolfman. It just looks like a grumpy old man. It's just awful. Everything Blumhouse touches these days just turns to crap. It's really bad. So tomorrow definitely check out Sound Engraver's stream. She's gonna be she just freshly read Dracula, so somebody who's just recently read Dracula giving a nice review. It'll be fun. I'll cut out some videos from this. I'll try. I don't know for sure, but I will try my best to give some little make some video to drop on Halloween night about something Halloween related. I don't know. I'll try my best. Got a lot of papers to grade and comment on for my teaching, but we'll see what I can do. But I do hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful Halloween week here, and enjoy your Halloween night. Whether it's just you watching some movies, you know, grab a pizza, grab whatever, grab some candy, or if you're taking somebody trick or treating or whatever, going to a party. Hopefully you have some good fun. Those Catholics, remember that All Saints Day is the very next day, so make sure you get to Mass. And then, of course, All Souls Day right after. You know, a nice little triduum there. But, yep, thanks for hanging out, guys. Happy Halloween. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue iconic monster stories you love. Thanks for watching.